Hello, this is the fourth video of polynomial functions, and today we will learn how to do long division. So in order to understand how to do long division, I think it's better just to look at it the very basic way without doing it with polynomials but with numbers. So let's say that we wanted to divide 729 divided by 9. So to do that, as you might recall, what you do is you want to first try to divide 7 by 9. Well, you know that nothing goes into it, so 0. We can do 0 times 9, so this is kind of 8 times. 0 times 9 is equal to 0, and we subtract it from 7, and we get 7, and then we bring down the 2. And now 9 times what gives you 72? 9 times 8, so 8 times 9 is equal to 72, so we subtract it from 72, we get 0. We bring down the 9. 0 times what gives you gives you 9, that's 1. We subtract 9, and we get this is equal to 0. Okay, so this is how you divide two numbers. That's like the long way. And so we will now use that same idea to divide two polynomials. So let's say that you wanted to divide x cubed minus 7x plus 6, and you wanted to divide by x minus 1. So in order to know if we are going to have a remainder or not, so for example, let's say that here we had an 8 instead of a 9 at the end. Then you know that the story would have been different, right? Because when you bring down the 8 right here, you know that 9 times nothing gives you 8, so times 0, and you're left with 8 nines, right? So you do have a remainder, so this is called a remainder. Now, how to know if dividing two polynomials will leave you with a remainder? Well, if the 0 of the denominator is also a 0 of the numerator, then you know that you will be left with no remainder. And when the 0 of the denominator is also the 0 of the numerator, then this means that the denominator is a factor of the numerator. So you could also say it, if the denominator is a factor of the numerator, then you will be left with no remainder. So to know that, let's find the 0 of x minus 1. And kind of almost by inspection, you know that the 0 of x minus 1 is 1, but either way, let's show it. So x minus 1 is equal to 0. We add 1 to both sides, and we're left with x is equal to 1. So that is our 0 for x minus 1. So if we were to plug that into our numerator, which is x cubed minus 7x plus 6, and we plug in 1, we get that this is equal to 0. So actually, the 0 of our denominator is also a 0 for the numerator, so we know that we will be left with no remainder. But now let's do our long division. So x cubed minus 7x plus 6. We have x minus 1. So what can we multiply x by in order to get x cubed? Well, x squared. So right here we see that we don't have a x squared, so what we do is add that term just with a coefficient of 0, so that we kind of have that space. There are different ways of doing it, but this is kind of the easiest, more organized way. So x times y gives you x cubed, and that's x squared. So now we will multiply this, the x squared times x minus 1, just like we did when we were dividing 729 divided by 9. So x squared times x, we get x cubed, and x squared times -1, we get negative x squared. And we subtract that from our number, and we get that 0 plus x squared. And now we bring down the negative 7x, and x times what gives you x squared, and that's times x. So here we add x to the top. So x times x is x squared, times -1, negative x, and we subtract this from x squared minus 7x, and we get 0, and we get negative 6x. And now we bring down the 6. X times what gives you negative 6x, and that's times -6. And okay, so I just erased and moved everything up because I didn't have enough space. But so negative 6 times x gives you negative 6x. Negative 6 times -1 gives you 6. So we plus 6. And if we subtract these two, we get 0 plus 0. So we find that we have no remainder because here we have 0 at the end. And we find that the other factor to x cubed minus 7x plus 6 is x squared plus x minus 6.